It's Matt Chapman, and I'm with Kerry Dryburgh in London, who is the Executive Vice President, People and Culture, but most importantly, Chief People Officer of BP, British Petroleum. So it's such a pleasure to be with you, Kerry.
Hi, Matt. Good to be with you too.
I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know it's probably been crazy for you. Tell us, what have these last few months been like for you?
It's been a whirlwind, I think, is probably the best way to describe it, Matt, particularly for us at BP. As I was just saying to you earlier, we announced our new purpose and ambition on the 12th of February this year. Bernard Looney, who's our relatively new chief executive, took over at the beginning of February, and he announced his new team on the 12th of February, of which also was a big focus on our purpose and ambition to become a zero carbon energy business by 2050 or sooner. And there was a huge lot of focus placed on that. And yet, less than a month later, by the 15th of March, we were in the throes of the COVID pandemic, and in fact, had closed all of our offices and were in a crisis mode, really thinking how we're going to keep our operations running in a global pandemic. And then, of course, in addition to that, we had the shift from an OPEC plus standpoint, and the supply demand challenges of working in a commodity business. And so for us as well, we had an immediate drop in demand, with people just not traveling anymore, and operations and businesses shutting down for periods of time. And at the same time, we had huge supply in the oil and gas part of our organization, which, in a supply demand business isn't a good combination. So, commodity prices dropped dramatically, and we were thinking about how do we not only make this big transition, which in of itself is a huge challenge for our company, but how do we do that in a world that's just vastly different from the one we'd had a month before? So, there've been a number of these challenges that, of course, we've been working on, and at the same time thinking, how do we reinvent our business, not just from a zero carbon standpoint, but in terms of what do we need to do to modernize our organization to get us there. So there's been a lot of challenges over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. So new into the role in February, and it's been keeping me busy ever since.
So, from a people and organization effectiveness standpoint, a lot of companies have talked about things that were in place that were, just in the nick of time or well set up, and things that weren't. How would you
Mm.
categorize between the things that were and the things that weren't?
I think in terms of our company, at least, we have a very good approach to managing crises, and so for us, in that regard, when the pandemic hit, we were very quickly able to mobilize teams across the world. Bear in mind, we work in many different countries, that some of which are very, far from London, different types of environments. Not all of our areas of operation are in big urban areas, of course, as you'd imagine. So, we've been over the years, we've developed a very good approach to managing that. And so we were very able and very quickly to mobilize the company's response. We also have very strong relationships with the governments in the countries in which we operate. So we were, again, kind of able to mobilize that relationship, or those relationships, very quickly, and work in partnership around how can we help different countries to manage the pandemic response too. And in addition, I, in my role, have responsibility for our health organization in the company. So, again, because of the nature of our business, we have a very strong health function that we're able to swing into action in terms of managing all of that. So, I think we responded very quickly, and we managed to get our operations to some kind of normal, let's call it, in a very short space of time. But in addition to that, of course, there was a lot of stuff that we weren't quite prepared for. And I think one of the big things for us was, how do you work remotely? We have over time been struggling with this whole concept of flexible working or agile working. Some of that's just the nature of our business, but some of it is just been our history and how we've evolved. We've got flexible working policies, we've got agile working policies, we've got different practices in different countries around the world. But I wouldn't say we were the best company at managing that. And what this has shown us actually is that we can do it. and we can do it very successfully. Look at us right here, having this conversation, having this, video. We've been doing that, like many companies, every single day. And I would say, in some regards, it's actually broken down some of the old hierarchies that may have existed in our culture. It's got, or it's enabled really quick accessibility to our CEO and some of the leadership team. We've been running weekly webcasts on a global basis, broadcasting to the maximum that Microsoft Teams would allow us, which I think is about 20,000 people these days. And we've been connecting with teams that we wouldn't have otherwise connected with very quickly and easily. Of course, there are some downsides too. There's no substitute in some ways for human connection. But I think we've surprised ourselves actually at what you can do when you really want to. And one of the things that we're really focused on now is how do we make sure we don't lose some of those learnings, and really, what our people have enjoyed as a consequence of having more flexibility, and I think a bit of a reset in our mindset and culture around how we work.
Now, you touched on communication
Mm,
and effective communication with the greater workforce, but something that's of great interest to me is leadership team communication, and particularly
mm,
during crisis. And obviously, you as chief people officer of BP played a very critical role on that. But what have been some of the formulas for success in keeping a synthesized leadership team, which can therefore communicate effectively across the constellation of the organization?
mhm. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And for us, as I mentioned, we announced a new leadership team across BP on the 12th of February. And the bulk of that team was new into role. So we had a couple of people on the team who were part of the previous executive team in our company. By and large, everyone was an internal appointment. We had one external hire join our team. So it was a pretty new team, actually. So that could have gone one of two ways in some ways. It could have been really tricky, or it could have been brilliant. And actually, what I think we found is we almost had a bit of a clean slate of how do we want to operate, which was a benefit actually. And we also have the privilege of a CEO who is an individual who's very authentic. He's very emotionally connected with the organization, Bernard Looney, and we just set a new tone. This is of how we want to lead our company, and it was a real opportunity for us to start to role model open, honest, transparent conversations with the organization. And as I mentioned, the ability to connect very deeply and quickly using, video technology, for example. So for us, I think the formula has been regular communication, access right up and down the organization, and using a very different style. So this very open, very transparent, no question is too difficult. Ask whatever you need to know, whatever you want to know. And we want feedback. So we've also been very focused on a two-way speak up type of culture. And I get all the time emails now coming into my mailbox from people from all over the company, as does Bernard, just raising ideas, raising questions, raising thoughts, feedback. And actually, it's been brilliant. So I'm really, I guess, positively, well, I'm just positive about the fact that we are changing the culture of our company. And the key thing for me as we manage change going forward is how do we develop deeper relationships in our organization, and what I would describe as emotionally connected leaders, leaders who care about individuals as much as they care about the company and the job we have to get done. And so I think this has been a real opportunity for us to reset that agenda and to start as we mean to carry on.
So you've had a long HR career outside of BP, but also up through
Mhm.
BP as you've risen to chief people officer. How do you think this will change the HR role in terms of the boundaries of what an HR person needs to cover?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because, stepping into this role, the boundaries have already kind of widened beyond probably anything that I could have imagined. So of course there's in my mind, there's the just what we have to do every single day to, keep the organization running from a people perspective. But how I see things expanding is really, how do you create the right environment for people in any organization, and how do you also not just manage the job and help people do the job that they're employed to do, but their whole person, their whole well-being, which is why in BP anyway, we've now changed the name of HR, human resources, to people and culture. And there's a real recognition that we're not only, this isn't about resources. Resources is a bit of a, you know um, not a great term, let's call it. This is about people, and it's about the environment that will enable those people to be successful. And so that's a recognition for us, at least, that this is our job. This is the job of myself and my team to really lead that agenda in our company. um, and so for us as well, the reason we also combined health and property, so I also have workplace as part of my organization too, because we felt health and the focus on well-being was critical to creating the right environment, as is the environment in which people work. And of course, who could have thought that with the pandemic impact, those two things have become ever more important than ever in our organization, because of dealing with the pandemic, and also what essentially is going to be the outcome of that in how we work in the future. So for me, it's more of a holistic approach to people and performance, and creating the right environment for people to bring their whole selves to work, and to be really successful.
And that was Kerry Dryburgh, Chief People Officer of BP. Kerry, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks, Matt.